Hello, Tech fans, and welcome into episode 167 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, originating from TSL's high-tech studios in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. On today's show, we have 7 Virginia Tech sports to discuss, as there is so much to get through as we go around the horn. We'll talk about number 4, Virginia Tech Wrestling, winning the ACC Dual Meet Championship on Friday. Number 18, Virginia Tech men's basketball being postponed against Louisville and North Carolina, what it means for the schedule moving forward. Spring sports have gotten underway. Softball ranked 14th in the country. Lacrosse ranked 18th in the country. Big starts to their seasons. And in honor of Valentine's Day on Sunday, what hokey moment do you love the most? Episode 167 of the Tech Sideline Podcast gets started right now. Whether you are watching live or archived on YouTube, listening on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or on Stitcher, we're so glad you could join us as we record on Monday morning, February 15th. Our crew today, as always, to my left, we have our managing editor, Chris Coleman. Across the way, our founder and general manager, Will Stewart. To my right, the best podcast producer in the land. He is Malcolm Stewart, and I'm your podcast host, Evan Hughes. It truly is great to have all of you with us. If you have a question for Will or Chris, it could be on any sport. We're talking about 7 of them today. Be sure to drop it in the YouTube live chat. We'll get to those at the end of the show. Or if you want to participate in a segment we're going to do at the end, because it was Valentine's Day. Hope everyone had a great Valentine's Day on Sunday. What hokey moment do you love the most? I asked that on Twitter and the message boards. I've asked Will and Chris that. We'll get to those at the end of the show. If you want to put that in the YouTube live chat, we'll read those when we get to that segment.
Now, wait a minute. Does it have to be sports related?
I was thinking that, but I also think it's totally open. It could be a Virginia Tech moment. I mean, what moment do you love the most?
Somebody's going to chime in with, I asked my girlfriend to marry me at the War Memorial, something like that.
Virginia Tech's Instagram stories are actually doing hokey love, like stories, who met on campus the other day, over the weekend on Instagram. So feel free to chime in, sports related or non-sports related. The Tech Sideline Podcast is presented by Anytime Fitness. Each new member gets a free fitness consultation, and a program is designed. You can sign up for $1 for the first billing period. Call 540-951-1340. Again, that's 540-951-1340. Ask for Tyler and tell him the Tech Sideline sent you. Tech Sideline Podcast also presented by Campus Emporium, as well as the Southeast Regional Training Center. Go to southeastrtc.com to get involved and support Virginia Tech Wrestling today. And it's great to have everybody with us on this dreary and kind of yucky day outside in Blacksburg. It's just above freezing. It's dark. It's rainy. It's cold. It's kind of that typical February day, right?
Yeah. I think some people call it Bleaksburg when it's like this, right?
Man, it's bad. It's like the clouds. It's not fog. The clouds have descended and
you're living inside a cloud.
Rested on top of Blacksburg. Yep. You guys, if you went here, you know what we're talking about. That's what's going on outside today.
Also, if you're watching live or archives on YouTube, Will, and you're enjoying the show, what should you do right now if you're watching the show?
Click like and subscribe, and click the little bell so you get notifications when we post a video.
There you have it. Please hit the like and subscribe button. We appreciate everybody's support that's watching the show on
Now, they
YouTube.
don't have a love button, so it's just got to be the like button.
We'll take the thumbs up.
It's okay. We know how you feel.
Exactly. What a busy show we have today. Doing prep for this last night, and there's just been a lot of news going on. We're officially in crossover season, which means winter sports collides with spring sports, but then men's and women's soccer and volleyball is about to start their spring season. Because of COVID, things got shuffled around, and so there's going to be over 10 sports going at once here shortly. So it's a busy time in Virginia Tech athletics right now.
And we are understaffed to cover them all, so please don't climb up our backs if we're not covering all 10.
Well, listen, we've got a lot to get to. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about 18th ranked men's basketball having their last 3 games postponed due to COVID-19 and what it means for the program. We will talk about Virginia Tech football and a new quarterback recruit that they picked up in Devin Farrell. We'll also talk about spring sports. But we begin episode 167 of the Tech Sideline Podcast talking about an ACC championship. That is the lead. That is the highlight from this past week, and it's 4th-ranked Virginia Tech wrestling capping off an undefeated regular season and winning the ACC dual meet championship, their first since 2017. The Hokies beat 16th-ranked Pittsburgh 27-12 on Friday inside of Castle Coliseum while not wrestling all of their starters. Will the Hokies finish the regular season 9-0? It's just the 7th time in program history the Hokies have finished the regular season unbeaten. It's the first time since 1954. They won.
No, wait a minute. It's 1956-57 going undefeated. It's the most wins beating out the 53-54 team, which went 8-0.
Yep. No, you're right. That's and they won 8, and this is the most wins a Virginia Tech team has had while going undefeated.
Correct.
With 9 wins.
Yeah.
And that was in our TechSideline.com article, which is available on the website right now. So the story of this match on Friday, however, the duel, was that Mekhi Lewis had his 27-match winning streak snapped, an injury forfeit. That's the story, and I want to get to that in just a moment. But if we can talk about the season as a whole for just a moment, Will, to win the dual meet championship, to run the table, just how impressive was this regular season for Virginia Tech?
I think it was really impressive because what I keep going back to is that they, out of the 10 weight classes, they start 5 freshmen, correct? 2 or 3 of them are red shirts, and I think maybe a couple of them are true freshmen. So to win an ACC championship when you are that young, now, so help me out here, Evan. How many of them are seniors? Is Corbin Myers?
He's a 6-year, yep. So he's a graduate at 133. John Borst, they honored him on senior night on Friday. He was at heavyweight.
But they've got Hunter Katka to fill in if Borst doesn't come back.
Borst did not wrestle on Friday. To my knowledge, as I'm running through this in my head, those are the only 2 seniors. And again, they could come back if they wanted. But those... how
many degrees can you get, Corbin Myers? That's a lot of
Myers
school.
was honored on senior night as well as Borst, so if that's any indication.
So, and it's not... They're young, and you to give an example of the depth that Tony's been building, and that's what's really exciting about all this. Joey Prada, who was the starter at 125 last year, subbed in Friday night at 133 and won. So it's
a weight class, which is hard to do.
Right. And so I just really like where the program is right now. If you had asked me before the season, if you told me, how many freshmen they were going to be wrestling and asked me, you think they'll win the dual meet championship? I'd have been like, probably not this year. So I'd call them a little bit ahead of schedule.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Tony might not want me to say that, but
we'll get to Mekhi Lewis in just a moment because that is unfortunately kind of the headline. It kind of clouded over winning the ACC dual meet championship. But Chris, I want to ask you this question. I was listening to Rock Harrison, who I think is kind of like a celebrity right now in Virginia Tech athletics.
No
after
doubt.
his
got a Twitter account.
He did. He's got a bunch of followers on it too.
Yeah, that happened fast.
And they had him on Packer and Durham on the ACC Network on Friday. And I was listening to his interview, and they were just talking about these Friday night duels and how they market it. I mean, do you think that over the last 2 years and Mekhi winning a national title and Latona doing what he did last week, I mean, that the average Virginia Tech fan is starting to pay more attention to Hokies wrestling?
Oh, I would certainly think so. Even if they don't watch, I think there are more that are aware that, hey, we had a wrestling match tonight. Let me go check and see the score and see how we did. So like at 2:30 on Saturday in the afternoon, my power went out. So a couple hours later, I decided to go downtown because it was starting to get cold and dark in my house, So I went down to Champs to watch the UVA-UNC game. But before that game came on, they were replaying the Tech Pitt wrestling match on the ACC network, and
nice.
it was on in Champs. So I watched one match, which of course was the last one that Tech lost. So I'm a bad jinx. Just like I jinxed the basketball team in my Friday Q&A about the program getting shut down.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead and knock on wood, Chris.
But anyway, Yeah, but there were a few people, I wasn't going to say watching it, but like watching it out of the corner of their eye.
Right.
I would say. So, yeah, I mean, I think the more successful you are, you're going to continue to add to the fan base, especially if you can have a guy like Mekhi Lewis who can win a national championship as he's done. You have an undefeated regular season, and if you start to make noise on the national level, then people will pay more and more attention.
Well, it's funny the moments that define a program. Certainly Mekhi winning a national championship, and then for me, there wasn't a lot of focus on Virginia Tech wrestling last year because Mekhi redshirted he took an Olympic red shirt, and it was kind of a transition year for the program, and you knew they weren't going to be as good as they were going to be in the future. So I thought last year was kind of a transitional year, and then this year, the big dual meet win over NC State and the drama of that and all the attention that got, and Rock Harrison's theatrics, and it's just things happen that cause a program to take off.
Isn't this Mekhi Lewis's 4th year in the program technically?
Yes, because he redshirted, then he wrestled as a redshirt
freshman,
freshman, then he took the Olympic red shirt, and now he is.
So technically, he's a redshirt sophomore. He's
correct.
A 4th-year redshirt sophomore. He could be a 5th-year redshirt sophomore if he wanted.
To.
Next year, right? So you're talking about a guy who could be a 7th-year senior one day if he wanted to.
If you had the over-under of 15.5 minutes that the word redshirt would be brought up on episode 167 of Tech Sideline Podcast, the under wins today. So the story, however, of Friday night's 27-12 win over 16th-ranked Pittsburgh is the fact that number 1 Mekhi Lewis, who has not lost in a Virginia Tech singlet since his first career match with Virginia Tech in 2018, suffered an injury against Jake Wenzel, who was last year's ACC champion at 165 while Mekhi was away. And Wenzel did have riding time. He had a lead in the second period when Mekhi Lewis got hurt, but the injury forfeit automatically gave him the win. Will, you watched the duel on Friday. How serious did it look, and how concerned are you, just as a wrestling viewer, about Mekhi Lewis and what the next couple of weeks might look like for him?
It looked pretty serious, and I've reached out to someone in the program, and they don't really want to say yet. I think they're probably going to look at him today in some sort of detail and try to figure things out.
What type of injury was it?
It was what part of the body? So it was the shoulder, but it was the lower part of the shoulder, like right in here.
So they might do like an MRI or something today, maybe.
Something like that. So Mekhi had won 27 in a row, and the remarkable thing about that streak is for the first 25 or so of those, he hadn't even suffered a takedown, and he was truly dominant. And then against NC State, when he was wrestling, UNC, he was wrestling Kennedy Monday.
Correct.
Monday registered a takedown on him.
It was a 3-2 final score, too.
4-3, I think.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
1 point.
And then against NC State, he was fine. But watching Mekhi this year, my impression of him is, and we'll get to the details of Friday night here in a second. My impression of him is that he's piling up a few points early and then just kind of making it through the second and third periods, and not allowing the other guy to come back. So he has not been as dominant. Then he gets taken down by Kennedy Monday. And then Friday night, before he even got his shoulder hurt, it was very alarming to watch him. Jake Wenzel got Mekhi's leg up in the air, which happens to Mekhi a lot. I mean, you saw it during his national championship win where who was that? Who was the guy who wrestled from?
I believe it was DiVincenzo.
DiVincenzo, yes. DiVincenzo got Mekhi's leg in the air, and he's very hard to take down from that position even. But Wenzel had it at his waist with about 1:40 to go in the period. About 20 seconds later, jacked the leg up to his shoulder. And then about 20 seconds after that, jacked the leg way up in the air to where Mekhi was almost doing a split in the air. So, I'm texting back and forth with my buddy and going, oh man, just don't hurt him. And then later on, he gets hurt in the shoulder. It looked, it's hard to say. It looked pretty serious. He tried to go. John Borst style, and got taken down, got ridden down to the mat, not taken down, but ridden down, and you could hear him crying out in pain once he hit the mat. And, so it's very concerning. And so they take him out. And
if it's down here, it could even be like a peck.
I know, yeah. And I didn't quite see the move that really made it happen. You could see when he got hurt, but I'm not sure exactly what made it happen. So I started looking at the schedule. And the ACC championship is 2 weeks from now on Sunday, 13 days from now. So 16 days out from the injury. The NCAAs start 34 days out from the injury. And from what I believe the discussion on the wrestling board was that you do have to wrestle in your conference tournament. In an ordinary year, and the NCAA may have even said this year, you have to wrestle in your conference tournament to wrestle in the NCAAs. So he could even be an entry in his weight class, forfeit, and that counts at the ACC tournament.
It just lessens your chance of winning the ACC.
Well,
you don't have anybody to wrestle at that weight class.
Correct.
Particularly the number one wrestler in the country, or ranked
and
number
his seeding, because of the loss to Wenzel A, because it is technically a loss because of the injury forfeit, and then if you were to forfeit, now, the NCAA Tournament Committee of Men's Basketball, I think, certainly took into effect when J-Rob got hurt, right?
Yes,
I mean,
correct.
they took that into, and I'm sure the seeding, would take everything into effect, but it certainly means he probably would not be the number one seed if he can't wrestle the ACCs.
Virginia Tech, man. Even when we go undefeated, something like this happens.
I know. I texted my buddy. I said that ruined my night. And it's a shame that they're winning the dual meet championship, their first one in 4 years. They had a three-peat in 15, 16, 17. Right, 14, 15, 16 was when the season started because they, 15, 16, 17, and then this is their first one in 4 years. And, it's the celebration is dampened by the fact that, arguably your best wrestler could be out.
Well, the ACC Championships, as you mentioned, coming up next weekend. It's hosted by North Carolina State.
2 weekends.
Is it 2 weekends? Okay.
Yeah.
So
February 28th? Yes, February 28th.
February
That's a
28th.
Sunday, last day of February.
And the Hokies, I think, have, I was doing the math, about 5 wrestlers that could win ACC championships, and that's including Mekhi if he's healthy. You've got Latona at 25, and gosh, who wouldn't love great television of him wrestling Jacob Camacho?
Camacho.
You know what's funny, too, is for Pittsburgh, he wrestled a guy, last name Camacho, no relation to that Camacho.
You're kidding.
I mean, what are the odds of that? Back-to-back weeks? I mean, that was interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But you've got Latona, who I would assume is going to be the number one seed at the ACCs because he beat Camacho. You've got Myers at 133, and that was one of the disappointing parts of the duel on Friday, Will, was you wrestling.
That was going to be the best matchup.
Mekhi Philippi, his only loss in his career, I believe, in ACCs was to Corbin Myers.
Yeah, Corbin Myers is 1-3 against Philippi or Philippi, however you pronounce
and
it.
he I believe Mekhi beat him twice in a state championship in Pennsylvania, so they go way back.
Yeah.
So that's going to be fun. They did not, both coaches, I guess, agreed they didn't want him to wrestle in the regular season because they're going to see each other in 2 weeks. So you've got that at 133. He's got a shot to win that. You've got Mekhi at 165, obviously. Bolin at 184. And then, if John Borst is able to wrestle, and we don't know, again, he got hurt against NC State, but if he wrestles, he's got a chance to win it. So it's exciting. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. And Tech has a chance to win the ACC dual meet title and then the ACC championship as well. So
I thought one more highlight about Friday was watching Dakota Howard wrestle
the junkyard dog
after the Mekhi Lewis injury. Dakota, if you look, for whatever WrestleStat's worth, WrestleStat is just a computer model that ranks wrestlers based on results and then predicts what will happen. And I don't remember who Dakota Howard was wrestling. Jared McGill. I think his first name's Jared. That's a pretty even matchup. Neither guy is a ranked wrestler, but it was predicted to be a close decision. And Dakota just annihilated him. It was, I think, 6-2 or something like that at the end of the first period. Dakota scored 16 points in the last minute 40. Mm-hmm. He got to the point where it's just – I've seen wrestlers that were overmatched just get buried by the other guy. Dakota was taking him down, letting him back up, taking him down, letting him back up, taking him – and he got 2 near falls in that whole process. It was just dominant. And then he didn't even stay to celebrate his win. He waved to the crowd and ran off into the tunnel to go see Mekhi. And that was that was just a remarkable moment to watch Dakota just demolish McGill.
He is a fan favorite, Dakota Howard. I mean,
Yeah.
when he wrestled, he is fun to watch. So.
And I think he's just a sophomore, so he's got a couple years left.
Again, he came in, I want to say at like 195, around 200, and then he's dropped down 2 weight classes to 74. I mean, so he's certainly a team guy. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, that's the news. Number 4, Virginia Tech wrestling, despite the injury from Mekhi Lewis, wins 27-12 over 16th-ranked Pittsburgh. They are the 2021 ACC dual meet champions, and they finished the regular season 9-0. All right, let's transition and talk about 18th-ranked Virginia Tech men's basketball. We did a podcast last Monday, February 8th, and since the last podcast we have done, Virginia Tech men's basketball has not played a game. The Hokies had their game last Tuesday, of course, postponed against Florida State due to COVID in the Seminoles program. Then on Saturday, we talked about it last week. We didn't know if the game was going to be played. Their head coach, Chris Mack, tested positive.
Louisville.
They had missed 3 games, Louisville, and then the Cardinals unable to play on Saturday. And then Saturday night, we find out that there is COVID inside of Virginia Tech's program, and their game on Tuesday at North Carolina is postponed. That was the only game that was mentioned in the press release, was Tuesday's game at North Carolina. The Hokies are next scheduled to play Saturday at Florida State.
Yeah.
So, Chris, now 3 games postponed due to COVID, and let's just say the Hokies are able to play this Saturday. That'll be 2 weeks since their last game. Just take me through your thought process on just this unfortunate situation the Hokies are in right now.
Missing games but still being able to practice is not ideal, but for the simple fact that you're still able to practice, you can still stay in basketball shape and keep yourself sharp and things like that. But when the program gets shut down, which I assume it's shut down now?
You know, that has not been made clear.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I figure like if you can't play a game because then you can't practice either.
Yeah, the I believe the press release said a positive test, singular, and contact tracing.
And contact, right.
Yeah.
So
how many players did it take out? How many coaches did it take out? Are they still able to practice at all?
I doubt it,
yeah.
Right? And if you can't play a game, that means you got to have like, I don't know. That means it took out most of them, right? Because Boston College was willing to play Florida State for like 6 players.
4 scholarship players and walk-ons.
Right? Right. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure that it seems like that took out most of Tech's team. So I'm going to assume they can't practice right now. So, yeah, the program shut down. And if they do play Florida State this weekend, I think that'll be Florida State's 3rd game back. So Florida State will just be getting back into the groove of things, and Virginia Tech will be playing their first game in 2 weeks without having been able to practice for a week. Now, here's the thing: I don't expect Tech to play Florida State.
Yeah, I don't either.
We don't know what the testing date was, and I don't know if like the positive test. Remember in football season, the positive test was 10 days and contact tracing was 14 days. I don't know if those numbers have been amended any now with more research and more data and everything. I have no idea. But if those tests took place on Friday and somebody tested positive on Friday, it would depend on when they contracted it, I guess, whether it's 10 days or not. I don't know, but I'm guessing they don't play Florida State, and even if they do, they will have not had enough sufficient practice time to make that competitive.
Yeah,
that would be extremely difficult. But at the same time, you feel like if you can play it, you need to go ahead and play it so you don't miss any more time. So you do get back up and running. You know, so you get a game under your belt, even if it's a bad game, before you get down the stretch run. So, yeah, it's tough.
So what I would tell Virginia Tech basketball fans is Tech's played 18 games, and I would say that particularly the first few games back, I think what you see will bear very little resemblance to the first 18 games. Reset your expectations back to I don't know what's going to happen. So, here's a stat. Let's say they do play Saturday. Florida State has won 23 straight home games. I think it's the second longest streak in the country.
That sounds about right.
Now, this is not relevant to, it may or may not be relevant to playing at Florida State, but they've also won 11 straight overtime games, which is the Division I record for most consecutive
including
overtime.
the ACC tournament against Virginia Tech in Buzz's final year and that crazy shot. I'll never forget that.
At least one crazy shot. I can't There are games that I hate to play. I hate to lose to Miami in basketball. I hate to play Florida State in basketball. I just hate Florida State will go out and poop on the carpet against some mediocre teams. They're a very talented team. I have a lot of respect for their program. But they'll put in mediocre games, but they just don't seem to do it against Virginia Tech. I remember maybe one game in Castle a few years ago where they just played poorly, but for the most part, they bring their A game.
We beat them once. I think it was the year Tech made the NIT. They beat them in Castle, and then they beat them again in the ACC tournament. I think we beat them twice that year. We can't beat them in Tallahassee.
Yeah. Well, not many teams can.
We've never beat them in Tallahassee since we joined the ACC. So I guess you've got to go all the way back to the Metro Conference days.
Maybe.
I guess it doesn't go all the way back to the Henson Heave, but sometime in the 80s, I guess.
Yeah, well,
probably.
We can go look it up.
Yeah.
It's almost playing Florida State in Tallahassee is as frustrating as playing Louisville at all.
Yeah.
You just feel like the odds are against you.
Yeah. So even if Tech was at full strength, that was going to be a difficult game to win. Now, that being said, Tech is a bigger team now than they have been, than they were under Buzz.
Yeah.
They have a better chance of matching Florida State in the paint now than they did during the Buzz Williams years.
Ever, yeah.
Right. But now if the game does get played, Tech is under strength, and they will not have had enough preparation time for it, in my opinion. So, but like I said, I feel like you've got to play it if you can, just to get back in the swing of things. So I wouldn't go into that game with any expectation.
You wrote an article on this last week, Chris, and we talked about it on the podcast last week, but I do think it's worth bringing back up. Virginia Tech, right now, they're ranked 18th in the country. They have a record of
14-4.
14-4. They're 8-3 in the ACC, 9-1 at home, 3-3 on the road. They have a couple of really good quadrant one wins. You look at their resume. I mean, how much does this hurt?
I suspect Tech is going to go to the NCAA tournament either way.
Joey Brackets has them as a 6 seed now.
And it's so hard for me to. And I don't even know how bracketologists do it, because you don't know exactly what the committee is thinking. Like, some teams are going to end up playing like 6 games fewer than other teams, and how do you take that into account for seeding and things like that? So, I don't. What we're comparing Virginia Tech to this year is different than in normal years. So I don't know what to expect, but I think it would. I think they'd have to lose out, basically, to not make the NCAA tournament.
Let me say this, resume-wise. I was listening to Packer Durham last week. They had him at a 1.04, and I think that was updated from Joey Bright. You're right on about that being the 6. But are they going to drop significantly? Are they going to go from someone that could be a 4 to a 6 to a 8 or a 9 potentially because of losing games against Florida State, maybe twice, North Carolina? How much does that hurt, do you think?
I don't think losing, and by losing you mean not playing.
I'm sorry, not playing, exactly. Not losing, not playing.
I don't think it hurts them from a not playing standpoint. If you flip a coin, if you play the game with math, the math suggests Virginia Tech would lose both of those games.
Yeah,
if they were played. So I don't think it hurts them from that standpoint. It hurts them because if they're just not playing, they get out of the routine, and now I assume they're not practicing. So when they come back and when they do play their next winnable game, whenever that is,
probably Georgia Tech next Tuesday.
Yeah, I guess so. They're not going to be in any sort of a rhythm at all.
Yeah, they have Georgia Tech, and then I think they're at Wake Forest. Does that sound right?
No, they've already played it.
Is it the other way around?
Let me read off the schedule real quick. At Florida State this Saturday, home against Georgia Tech next Tuesday, home against Wake Forest next Saturday, home against Louisville March 3rd, and then at North Carolina State March 6th to close the regular season, assuming none of the postponements get made up. So
I think the Wake, Georgia Tech, and NC State games, probably 2 out of 3.
You can beat Louisville.
I know they can beat Louisville.
Wouldn't that be nice to just finally put the Louisville?
Yeah.
Not only that, just to sweep them all and go 18-4 and 12-3 in the conference.
But yeah. So I don't know. I think the difficult thing is not playing the games from a record standpoint. The difficult thing is you're not playing, so you get out of rhythm. If you're not practicing, maybe you get out of basketball shape a little bit, and you just lose that step. Right. I don't pretend to know what it's been like for every single team when they've shut their program down. I know Florida State, it was their first game back this past week against Wake, and they were fortunate to get past Wake.
I think so. Yeah.
That was at Florida State too, and it went to overtime.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Normally, you'd expect Florida State to win that game by about 20. Clemson was looking like the ACC's best team, and then their program shut down, and they came back and they were awful. So when your program gets shut down, it's tough, man. Everybody else is moving forward. Like Duke's got a losing record, right? Or are they 8-8 now?
They won. They're back to 500.
Okay, they're
beat
back
North
to
Carolina
500.
State over the weekend.
Well, and that's what happens when you shut down your program for a month and everybody else is practicing, right? So Tech's not going to be shut down for a month, we hope.
Yeah.
But it sounds like they're going to be shut down for a week or the better part of a week, and that's not going to help matters.
If there is any silver lining, I guess, from this, obviously an unfortunate situation is that sometimes when these postponements come out, these teams are saying we're out 3 games, right?
Right.
And the thing in the release on Saturday was just 1 game, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, you can read into that however you want, but it could be worse, and so hopefully everybody's okay. But and you wrote about it, and I didn't want to say it on the podcast because I didn't want to be the guy who said something that was jinxed, and then I get clipped on YouTube, and then it's like, hey, look what they said. But, I mean, a remarkable job up to this point, though, I mean, by Virginia, and it's nobody's fault. I mean, but it just the discipline to go this long. It's tough. It's tough to do that. I can only imagine how hard it is on those players and coaches, and it's just.
I'll tell you what, man. When I had nothing to do on Saturday, and I couldn't take sitting around. No, granted, it was cold because I had no heat, but I couldn't take sitting around for 2.5 hours. With nothing to do. I was reading, but then it got dark, and I'd almost burned my candles out at that point. So I went downtown, right? So that's technically a lack of discipline on my part, right? I should have sat home and froze to death, but I didn't. So yeah, I mean, some of these dudes, it's gonna happen. Yep. It's gonna happen. It's gonna be. I know you get to this point in the season and it hasn't happened yet, and you're like, oh man, maybe it's not gonna happen, and then it does. But I swear I jinxed it on Friday because I literally crossed out that section of my article where you could still read it, but I crossed it out as like and I think I even called it an anti-jinx or something like that.
Yeah, anti-jinx. That's right.
An anti-jinx method, and then boom, didn't work.
Well, again, that's the news. And if they're able to play on Saturday, it'll be 2 weeks since their last win, their last game, and that was an overtime win in Coral Gables against Miami. That's all of the men's basketball news that we have. But there is football news because we teed it up at the beginning of the show. We're going to talk about 7 sports today. So wrestling, check. Men's basketball, check. Let's talk a little Virginia Tech football for a moment. And that is there's a new quarterback commitment. The lone news of the week in Virginia Tech football is that 3-star quarterback Devin Farrell has committed to Virginia Tech. He's in the class of 2022, 6 foot, 192-pound quarterback. He attends Milton High School in Alpharetta, Georgia. Chris, we talked before the show. You said you got to watch some tape on him.
Yeah.
What do you like about 3-star quarterback Devin Farrell?
He's a natural quarterback. He always keeps his eyes downfield, even when he's scrambling. Milton's a really, really good 7A school, I believe, in Georgia.
So, yeah.
There's like 3 counties right around Atlanta, like Cobb County, Gwinnett County, and it's always a team from one of those counties that wins like the state championship, especially like the 7A state championship in Georgia. And he plays for one of those power Georgia programs, so he plays elite competition for high school night in and night out, and that's what I really like about him. Some people might look at the 6 foot, 192-pound listing and get worried. There's no reason to worry, but there's also no reason to say, oh, it's no big deal. We just don't know because these guys get measured and stuff at camps and recruiting circuit events and things like that. There hasn't been one of those. These guys haven't been to one of those since the summer of 2019 now. So that listed weight on 247 just easily could have been his weight from 18 months ago.
Could be what he has on his huddle video. It could be anything.
Right. So, and we won't know a lot of these legitimate heights and weights until camps reopen and things like that, which goodness knows if that'll happen this summer or not. So I don't get too worried about that, but I think he's a very nice prospect. Now, what worries you, of course, is, and this is not specific to him, this is everybody these days, he's never visited Virginia Tech. So if recruiting does get open back up in April or May or whenever, these guys we know that schools will lose commitments from players who committed before they'd visited anywhere else, right?
Yeah.
Because they couldn't visit anywhere else. And I'm not saying he's going to be one of those guys, but I am saying, even in a normal year, you take recruiting with commitments with a grain of salt or whatever. But you take all of them that way this year, and that's not just Virginia Tech. That's everybody. But I'm excited to have him, but I'm not inking him into the recruiting class yet. I'm writing everything with a pencil there.
I think his film looks really good. Chris talked. He keeps his eyes downfield. He fit the ball in some tight windows. Scale of 1 to 10, his arm looked like about a 7 or an 8. But he's just a junior in high school. I think his mechanics for a junior are pretty darn good. They're pretty impressive.
He reminds me of like Josh Jackson, except not as, how do I put this? Not as thick as Josh Jackson and more athletic than Josh Jackson. But as far as Jackson was really advanced mentally and from a mechanical standpoint and all that. So I think this guy's advanced like Jackson from a mental standpoint.
Yeah.
Quickly, for a long time, Virginia Tech's had multiple quarterbacks in the quarterback room. You think about 2017 with Josh Jackson, you're thinking, okay, you got Josh Jackson for a couple of years. And then Ryan Willis, you got him for 2 years, but then you've got Quincy Patterson and Hendon Hooker. And then when Hooker gets the job, you've got Patterson and Braxton Burmeister. You look at this quarterback room now, and you've got Braxton Burmeister, you've got Knox Kadum, you've got Taj Bullock, and then you've got Farrell, who's a class of 22 high school grad.
And Blumrick.
And Blumrick, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I knew I was forgetting somebody. I feel like it was much more clear, the future of what the quarterbacks would look like for years to come at Tech. Will, when I ask you, what do you think of the future of the quarterback room? Because Burmeister's not going to be here forever just because he's older and a transfer. What do you think the future looks like? Is this a Taj Bullock type waiting in the wings? Do you think that this is maybe a job that he can take? Is this a Devin Farrell? What do you think about the future, the next 2, 3, 4 years for Virginia Tech football, the quarterback spot?
I've learned not to look beyond next year. No, I think
simply put,
there's a lot of options there, but like you said, back in 2017, you would have thought you could have Josh Jackson for 3 or 4 years, and you saw how quickly that changed.
And then you thought you were going to have Ryan Willis for 2 years, and he got benched. And then you thought you were going to have Hendon Hooker for 3 years, and he got benched and then transferred.
So I would answer it this way. I think they're doing a pretty good job stuffing the pipeline. I think all these guys have potential, and don't count out Knox Kadum. I thought he did pretty well in his time against Clemson, and it's hard to say how much these guys, we got to have spring football for you to feel good about the quarterback room. You can't go through 2 straight spring footballs and not be able to develop your quarterbacks during the spring. And I think it's critical for a guy like Kadum. And is Bullock here yet, or will he come in the fall?
He comes in May.
Yeah. Right. So it's a little dicey to me if something happens to Burmeister. Other than that, I think things are progressing well, and they've got options.
It's extremely dicey after Burmeister. Last year, the news articles last year were heading into the season where Virginia Tech has 3 quarterbacks that have won a Power 5 football game.
Yeah.
Right, and that's accurate. And this year they've got Burmeister, who's done that. Blumrick, who is a guy, look, we don't even know that he's going to be second string quarterback at Virginia Tech.
Sure.
He hasn't taken a snap in the offense yet. I bet on the very first day of spring practice, Burmeister is going to be first and Knox Kadum is going to be second. just based on experience.
I think that's fair.
Within the system.
Yeah.
So we'll see how Bloomer does. I think they like his athleticism and they like his arm talent and they like his demeanor. But the fact of the matter is, he could never make it on the field, even as like the backup at Texas A&M. So we can't assume that he's going to do that.
And
here.
he could be playing different positions. You never know.
I mean, if it doesn't work out at quarterback, he has that physical capability. But it's possible that he's not the backup quarterback this year, but his ceiling is high enough where he could potentially be the starter the year after with a year in the program and everything like that, and gaining experience within the system. I am concerned this year about quarterback. I think Burmeister will do fine if he's healthy. But the last 2 years, I know this. I know Virginia Tech 2 years ago needed 3 quarterbacks for various reasons, whether benchings or injuries or whatever. This past year, they needed 4 quarterbacks, whether it was benchings or injuries or COVID or whatever. And Knox Kadum being the 4th against Clemson. They needed to play him, right? So if they need 3 this year, then that means you're dipping down to Kadum and Blumrick. They would both play snaps at some point this year for Virginia Tech. If you needed 4, that means Taj Bullock would, but that's unlikely. That's rare that you get down to your 4th-string quarterback. That doesn't happen very often. But there were so many years throughout all of Virginia Tech history where, Tech's quarterback stayed so healthy that they rarely ever missed a start or even a play.
I think they ran less in the past, though. They run a lot.
They do run a lot.
In the Justin Fuente, Brad Cornelson offense.
Yeah. Logan Thomas ran a lot, but he was so big.
Such a hoss.
Yeah. Gerard ran a lot, but he was so big.
Yeah.
Hooker has their frame, but Hooker never had any muscle mass at all. He had the body of a basketball player, not a football player. And Burmeister's not the biggest guy in the world either.
Right.
So, yeah, you do. You worry about durability there. Like I said, my biggest concern amongst the starters on offense is actually running back. How can you possibly replicate the production that Khalil Herbert gave?
Sure.
Because if you can't, that puts more pressure on the quarterbacks. And I would prefer not to have to run Burmeister a lot, because if he does get hurt, what does that mean for your team? I think it's a potential huge downgrade, right?
Well,
yep.
It is Monday, February 15th, and we have plenty of time to discuss the spring practices coming up and the offseason, and of course any Virginia Tech football news. We'll bring it up here on the Tech Sideline Podcast. Mention 7 sports are being mentioned today, 3 down. Let's get one more in before we take a break, and because we're going to go to a break, we'll come back and then we'll talk about spring sports. So let's talk about Virginia Tech women's basketball here for a moment. Hokies 11-7. 6-7 in the ACC. They are receiving votes outside of the top 25. They've won 4 in a row. They did beat Miami, who they were tied with in the ACC standings on Thursday, 75-55. Good win in Coral Gables. They've now beaten Miami, at Pitt, Virginia, and Miami, Pitt, North Carolina, and North Carolina State. They've won their last 4 games. Their game Sunday was postponed against Boston College.
Which is unfortunate.
But it was COVID in Boston College's program. Yeah. So their game this Thursday was supposed to be against Duke. They suspended their season in December. So the Hokies play on Sunday at noon against Syracuse.
Sunday the 21st.
Yeah. So the bottom line is they've had a couple of, the UVA, they canceled their season. They had that game on the 2nd that got canceled. Duke, so they're missing some games, but they're, again, not a lot's happened since last week, but they're 6-7. They're right where they need to be to make a run here with Clemson and North Carolina. So they only have 3 games left in the regular season.
Wow. And they're currently projected as a 10 seed by the guy who does
Charlie Palm, I think his name
Charlie
is.
something.
Yes.
Yeah, he does women's bracketology.
Charlie something. He's
Charlie something.
But and I think Virginia Tech.
I was focused on the numbers, not that guy's name.
I think the Hokies can win out. Clemson will be a difficult one. They'll go Syracuse this Sunday, at Clemson next Thursday, and then home against North Carolina, a game that was added. I believe the Hokies are already 2-0 against North Carolina this year.
So they're going to play them a third time?
They are, because the Virginia game got postponed, so the ACC added a game for them. So they will play the Tar Heels for a third time. They beat North Carolina 73-69 on January 31st, and they beat UNC at UNC 66-54. So,
you're right. They could win out, particularly, they're really hitting their stride. It was so frustrating earlier in the year because you see the talent on the team. There's so much talent out there. And they've got the top scoring duo in the ACC with Kitley and Shepard, who almost, I think one averages 19.1, the average is 18, the other one averages 18.9. They got the double machine in Kitley. I wish Georgia Amore was a year or two older because she's really good, and I would love to have her just have more experience.
Yep.
But there's just a bunch of talent out there, and that's what I've seen in the 4-game winning streak is the talent has taken over, and the results are matching the talent.
And I think it's easy to get down on yourself. Whatever losses they were accumulating before were, my gosh, it was all like watching the same game, right? I mean, they'd be winning and then they'd lose in the last 2 minutes because they couldn't close the game out, right? Well, then all of a sudden, so by the way, and that's demoralizing. Losses like that, if they're all the same, they kind of build on themselves. You can dominate the whole game and then you go out there with 2 minutes left and it's in the back of your mind, are we going to do this again, right? Well, then they played NC State and they actually won one of those games.
Against the
second-ranked team in the country. So sometimes that does a lot for your confidence and gets you over the hump as far as that stuff goes. And maybe that's what we've seen.
That's what it looks like.
And if they can win out, they would finish, again, assuming no games are postponed or anything, the 3 games they have left on their schedule, they would finish 14-7 and 9-7 in the conference. And then, you never know what happens at the ACC. So to me, that's a tournament-worthy resume right there. And even at 6-7 right now, I go back. I said this last week. I'll say it again. I was watching the ACC Network after one of their games, and Muffet McGraw is now an analyst for the network, legendary Notre Dame women's basketball coach. And she said she believes that Virginia Tech has the 4th best talent. I believe it was Muffet or somebody on the network said it, but I'm pretty sure it's 4th best talent of any team in the conference.
Well, you got the 2 leading scorers, and I guess is Kitley the leading rebounder?
I don't know if she's a leading rebounder. In
she's up there, yeah. I mean, that's probably accurate.
So she goes between 1st and 5th in the country in double doubles, and she might be like maybe 1 or 2 in the ACC. So let's say the women make the tournament and the men make the tournament. The stat has surfaced that will be the first time ever.
Really?
That Virginia Tech's men's and women's teams have made the tournament. So I did my research last night, and I think I may burp this into a free article today just because it's got a table and it's something that should really be seen visually, okay? So the men between 1967 and 1986 went to 6 NCAA tournaments through 1986. Then in 1994 and 95, the women went and the men did not.
And that was the first time the
women had been, yeah. Okay. I think they started the program in the 70s.
That sounds right.
So it took Carol Alfano a while to build them up to an NCAA tournament team. So the women went in 94 and 95. The men went in 96. And I looked it up. The women were like 11 and 19 or something like that. It wasn't even close.
Yeah. And then the men didn't go again for 11 years.
Well, and there's the problem. Neither one of them went in 97. And then from 1998 through 2006, the women went 7 times. Over that stretch because Bonnie Henriksen showed up and got them going. And 2006, I believe, was I'm blanking. Who took over for Bonnie?
Dunkenberger.
Beth Dunkenberger went to the NCAA tournament with Bonnie's program, basically. And that was 2006. And finally, in 2007, Seth Greenberg got his team into the NCAA tournament the very next year. So that was 2007, and the women didn't go because the Beth Dunkenberger era started to take hold and the results started to decline. From 2008 through 2016, neither one. I mean, the women haven't been since 2006, Correct. So you can now wipe them off that side of the table. And the men went in 07, 17, 18, and 19. So it's been this interesting, together they've gone to however many tournaments that is. It looks like close to 20. but the programs have been one's up and the other's down, one's up and the other's down. It's kind of interesting.
But we're a basketball school now, so they're both good.
That's right. They're both going to start going every
People
year.
all like to chime in that Tech's a wrestling school. Some say that we're a softball school right now, and we're going to talk.
Honestly, we're pretty much good at everything except.
Well,
Well, how about this? Let's step aside for a break. But here's what we have coming up in the rest of episode 167. We are going to talk softball, lacrosse, baseball. Plus, yesterday was Valentine's Day. What Hokie moment do you love the most? Drop it in the chat. We'll talk about that and then get to your YouTube live questions. You're listening and watching to episode 167 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, presented by Anytime Fitness, Campus Emporium, and the Southeast Regional Training Center. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back, episode 167 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, recording on Monday morning, February 15th. Great to have you with us. Evan Hughes, Chris Coleman, Will Stewart, Malcolm Stewart behind the scenes. Tech Sideline Podcast is presented by Campus Emporium. They're proud to sponsor the Tech Sideline community. A portion of every sale is returned to Virginia Tech in support of its endowment for excellence, student programming, and need-based scholarships. We have been serving the Virginia Tech community for over 25 years from our locations in Blacksburg and our online store. Please visit the #1 source for Virginia Tech merchandise at campusemporium.com or come see us at 207 North Main Street or 1337 South Main Street. All right, before we transition and talk about spring sports, because yes, they're back and there's already a lot to talk about with softball, lacrosse, and baseball starting this weekend. As we record at exactly 11 o'clock in the morning on Monday, February 15th, Mike Young is speaking to reporters on the weekly ACC men's basketball coaches video conference. This is what Norm Wood tweeted out 9 minutes ago. He says, Mike Young, his team has had a couple of people test positive in his Tier 1 group. He said the team can practice, but on a limited basis. Unsure about Saturday game against Florida State. And then we got a tweet in from one of the viewers saying, ACC COVID protocol now is 5 days with negative test and 7 for contact tracing per Roanoke Times.
So they've changed that a lot since football season.
Yep, good.
Okay.
So just thought we'd
appreciate that, whoever sent that.
Yep, that was RG on Twitter. Appreciate that. And that was for the Roanoke Times, he was saying. And we just got done talking about that and wanted to make sure we updated everybody. All right, let's so spring sports. It's here. It's hard to believe. It's middle of February.
It's spring. Yeah, it looks like spring
serious,
outside.
we look outside. It is one of the yuckiest days of 2021. Is that fair?
It's going to get worse on Thursday, apparently.
Snow and rain and cold and no sun. But let's talk about spring sports. And let's start with 15th ranked Virginia Tech softball. What a start this weekend for the Hokies. And, you think about this program over the last couple of years. Pete DeMoore comes in 2019 and takes a team that won, I think, 24 games in 2018, and they nearly win 50 games, and they win the ACC regular season championship in his first year when they were preseason to pick, I think 10th or 11th in the conference. And,
really? Wow.
They get all the way to our NCAA regional final, and then last year they're 21-4, and they played in the Clearwater tournament, which is like the equivalency of the Maui tournament in men's basketball, but even bigger, and they beat some big-time teams. And then COVID hits. They come back. They start their season this past weekend against Kennesaw State. This is the program that Pete DeMoore built before taking the Virginia Tech job. And I was telling Will and Chris, the equivalency to me, Kennesaw State is like a Butler a couple of years ago, right? In the early 2010s when they were just a really good mid-major.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Hokies win 6-0, 6-0, and 4-0. They shut out the Owls in all 3 games. And Keely Rochard, an All-American who led the NCAA in strikeouts a year ago, was terrific. 16 innings pitched, 18 strikeouts to 2 walks. And let's start right there with the pitching. We've got the numbers here from Hokie Chip Grubb, who's doing a great job covering the team for Tech Sideline, and I know he's watching right now. Will, it was just impressive every way you look at it.
Yes. So before you go, Kennesaw State, they batted .350 last year, which was 7th in the country.
What was their record last year? They were 21-4 when the season
They
stopped.
beat 15th ranked Auburn last year.
Yeah.
To
Are we talking about Virginia Tech?
No, I was talking about Kennesaw. Or who are you talking about?
Kennesaw State was also 21-4.
Kennesaw State
okay.
was 20. I mean,
Right.
they were rocking last year.
So they were 21-4 when the season shut down, and they returned 8 of their top 9 hitters in a year in which they hit .350 as a team, which was 7th in the country.
Right.
And then they didn't score a run against Virginia Tech.
Yes. So that, stats are stats. That speaks for itself.
Yeah, numbers don't. Numbers are unbiased, right? Sometimes they lie, but they're unbiased. So 21 innings pitched, 0 runs, 8 hits, 20 strikeouts, 2 walks over the course of the weekend for Virginia Tech. That'll do. Say Rochard pitched 16 innings.
16 innings.
So that means you got 5 innings of no run ball from the rest of your staff too.
Well, so Ivy Rosenberry, who's a true freshman, and here's in softball, right? You only need like really one great pitcher, right? And Keely Rochard threw the majority of all innings last year. But now I think Tech has some depth behind her. Mac Osborne's a local product. Ivy Rosenberry, she throws a complete game in her collegiate debut in Game 2 of the doubleheader on Saturday, and she was terrific. So I thought that was honestly, as great as Keely was, I think everybody expects her to be that great, right? So that was really impressive. Ivy Rosenberry was that impressive this weekend.
So Chip wrote that she induced the Owl batters to hit 21 ground balls, 18 of which went for outs, only gave up 3 hits. So back to Rochard. Listen to what Chip writes. The 2 shutouts that she pitched ran her consecutive scoreless inning streak over 2 seasons to 41 straight scoreless innings. She's given up exactly 1 run in the last 82 innings. And softball games go 7 innings, right?
Correct.
That is almost 12 games.
And there's a run rule involved as well. So
Right.
Yes,
Which
a full game is 7 innings. Yep.
So that's probably 12 or 13 games she has given up 1 run and has struck out 113 in those 82 innings. So time to dig into the archives and start doing some Angela Tincher comparisons. We don't have that stuff ready, but reading that makes me want to go do that.
And there were a couple, the offense here, as I'm looking at Coach DeMora's quote, he said, offensively, I would grade us a C. We hit some balls right at people. KSU's pitching was good, but we need to stick with our approach better. But it's early, and I'm confident that we'll improve. This is a really good offense Tech has. You think about when season starts, right? It takes a little bit. It's been 11 months since they've seen live pitching, but this is a really good offense.
Weather. Yeah.
And one name to keep an eye on right there in the middle, gentlemen, Cameron Fagan was one of the top preseason ranked one of the top freshmen in the country. The Fagans are one of the most well-known softball names because their older sisters were just dominant in the SEC. And DeMora gets the younger sister, Cameron, to commit to Virginia Tech.
She's a shortstop?
Shortstop, leadoff hitter, hit .455 this weekend, and had a great start. And then they started Addie Green, who's a freshman, at second base. Emma Ritter got some time in the outfield. So it's a perfect combination of he's recruiting at such a high level, and then he inherited a team with a lot of talent. There's just so many options for him right now.
And so one of the things that people need to know about the Virginia Tech softball program is for softball program, their facilities are actually very good.
Terrific.
The indoor facility that they have, I've told this story before, I'll tell it again, after the Virginia Tech expanded Rector Fieldhouse and built the indoor throws facility and also for track, and also the indoor, it's basically an infield that's indoors, plus some pitching and hitting add-ons. I remember Pete DeMora was doing a press conference one day, so I walked in, I asked him, I said, what do you think about those facilities? And he said, and he wasn't exaggerating, he said they're the best in the country. They're comparable to from what I hear, the other 2 teams in the ACC with comparable facilities are Florida State and UNC. But if you're used to hearing us criticize Tech's facilities, sometimes that's not the case here. It's the other way around.
We criticize their football.
Yes, we criticize the football facilities. That's not the case here. Tech has excellent softball facilities.
It actually appears to me that Virginia Tech is successful in the sports where they have the facilities and the infrastructure in place that are comparable to the best teams in the nation in that sport. Mm-hmm. So track and field has really good facilities, and they're really good. Wrestling has great facilities, and they're really good. Men's basketball has their own
building,
and so does women's basketball. and they're good programs. The baseball program has improved with new facilities. Softball is some of the best facilities in the country. What doesn't?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Tech's Olympic sports right now are just an example of, if you put the resources into it, it doesn't guarantee success, because you still have to hire the right coaches and everything like that too. But at the same time, if you don't have those in place, you're probably not going to succeed, and you give yourself a much greater chance of success if those facilities are in place. So we have great facilities in softball. We have a great softball team. It adds up.
Whit typically does a really good job hiring coaches. You know, the guys, the men and women that he hires are competent tacticians and game planners and those sorts of things. So if you provide them with the facilities, they'll be successful.
Yeah, DeMoore's excellent. I mean, he really is. And he's recruiting well. And I still go back to the team he inherited. They went from winning 24 games, 10 seeded the ACC, to winning an ACC championship the next year in his first year.
Yeah.
I mean, just
is
impressive. And I'll go ahead and say it on record. I really do believe the ceiling for this team is the Women's College World Series. They can get there.
No doubt.
They've got the depth.
Chris and I were talking about this the other day. If Angela Tincher had the hitting that this team has, they did make the College World Series with her pitching. Who knows what they could have done?
I will say that Pete DeMoore is a tough grader. Now, granted, he said it. He said it in here himself. He says, "I know I'm a tough grader." He gave the offense a C, which is probably right considering they hit 241 as a team.
Right.
Gave the pitching an A, which of course he said defensively I'd give us a C+. We made the plays we're supposed to make, and we saw areas that need improvement. I feel like when you don't give up any runs, 18 ground balls, right?
You don't give up any runs.
18 ground ball outs when Rosenberry pitched. So I feel like that in itself is a grade a little more worthy than a C+. That means your infield's really on top of things, right?
That's true.
But
so they have a huge weekend coming up as well. So the ACC is split.
It's like actually a week.
Yeah, it is. And you're 100% right. And so the Hokies have Clemson, who was a startup program last year, and they are recruiting very well.
Oh, by the way, as far as facilities, I'm sure Clemson's up there too. They just started up their program.
Clemson new stadium. And then they've got Florida State. And so what was really – so you go back to DeMoore's first year. It's funny. So Tech was preseason picked to finish 10th or 11th in the conference. And Florida State was just coming off of their national championship. Yeah. And the coaches poll, everybody voted Florida State to win the ACC that year except for one team. And somebody picked Virginia Tech, who was preseason 11th in DeMoore's first year, to win the ACC. And they did. And I'm pretty sure it was Lonnie Alameda, who's the coach of Florida State. She saw it coming.
Really?
And then the Tech were the one seed of the ACCs. They got bumped early by NC State, didn't play Florida State the whole year. And then last year, they were supposed to host Florida State for a 3-game series the last weekend of the regular season, which never got to happen. Wow. So now, finally,
so we still don't know. It was finally
this week, we get Clemson, Virginia Tech, which should be good, and then Florida State, and their pitching's not as great as it used to be. They're still a good team, and they were preseason picked to win it. Tech was preseason second. I think Florida State's 12th and Tech's 15th. But if you're a softball fan, even if you want to watch some good softball this weekend, I believe a decent amount's going to be streamed on the ACC network. Actually, they're playing that in Atlanta, I believe, in the pod. So this is a big test early, which is great. And I know Coach DeMoore, I think, likes to test his team early. But now you're in ACC play. It starts right now. So that's the update on 15th ranked Virginia Tech softball.
So before we leave that, do you know if any of those games are going to be televised on the ACC?
That's what I think. I think they'll be on the network extra. I don't know that for a fact. I would think they will be. That is my. I don't know that for a fact. However,
I'm working on pulling up the schedule.
So. But those will be important, and again, they're a fun team to watch. They really are. And
so let's give Chip a shout out. By the way, he went to Kennesaw State, got home, I think roughly midnight last night. He said the roads through Floyd County were icy, foggy. He sent his recap at 1:38 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah,
he's the best.
Yeah, so he's going to preview Clemson and Florida State together. That'll run. We'll do the recap first thing after the podcast, and then get the Clemson and Florida State preview in before those series start.
Fantastic. If you want a good game to watch this week, well, you can watch softball, play Clemson, Florida State. You can watch Virginia Tech baseball this weekend. I'll get to that in a moment. Or you can watch a big in-state series on Wednesday at 2 o'clock from Lane Stadium. 7th-ranked JMU Lacrosse playing 18th-ranked Virginia Tech Lacrosse. Virginia Tech Lacrosse got their season underway this past Saturday. They're ranked 18th in the country. 13-5 win at Liberty. Angie Benson, 8 saves. Lubno had a hat trick for Virginia Tech. They've got Paige Petty back. Again, lacrosse, a program. John Sung inherited a program that was, here at the ACC, and he has so quickly elevated that program.
It was awful, and he's done a great job. Did they lose their? They lost their best player. She's not playing this year, right?
No, she's Paige Petty's the best player.
Paige
She's
Petty,
playing.
yeah.
Yep.
What did I see about, or maybe not their best player? Somebody.
Taylor Caskey, who is one of their best players.
Okay.
She injured her Achilles, and that is a big loss. There's no
I
question.
thought I read something about how one of them was not playing this year because they're pursuing other opportunities or something this spring.
I might have missed that.
I'm pretty sure I saw that on Twitter.
She's going to help coach because she's sidelined for the year. But that is she's out with an injury.
So let me ask you say they're 18th in the country. How strong is women's lacrosse?
In the ACC, it's ridiculous.
I know.
It is like.
So you can have the number 4 men's soccer team in the country, and
they're 18th. I want to say there's at least 4 teams in the ACC ahead of them, and a lot of them are top 5. But I can tell you what so they're playing in Lane, 2 o'clock on Wednesday, and this is it's on the ACC network. This is their huge rival. So JMU won the national championship in women's lacrosse in 2018. They beat Boston College. And Hokies have never beaten the Dukes, and they have come very close under John Sung. And so is this year they finally beat JMU.
So that's on the ACC network?
At 2 o'clock. So you guys right here can pull up the game, but that's going to be a big one against the Dukes. And they're ranked 7th in the country, and Virginia Tech right now is ranked 18th in the country, and that's at 2 o'clock on Wednesday.
Do you think they'd let me in Lynch Stadium if I wanted to watch it?
Chris Coleman, you are a rock star. I go and cover that. So, all right, that's the update on lacrosse, and we get to our 7th team that we're going to hit. This podcast is titled Around the Horn. Let's finish with Virginia Tech baseball because they open their season this weekend against Kent State, a program that is the best in the MAC. They have been for quite some time. A really good mid-major. This will be, I think, a really nice test for Virginia Tech this weekend. All 3 games will be on the ACC Network Extra. 4 o'clock first pitch Friday, 1 o'clock first pitch Saturday and Sunday. And, Chris, this is, I think last year could have been a real turning point. I think Coach Sheff had a strong program with Seymour and Taylor, and we'll never know what could have happened last year.
It's extremely frustrating. He's a proven head coach. You had the battery last year that you're looking for. 2 guys, both of which you have, legitimate chance to be major league players one day. And Seymour was just having a great year. And he ended up becoming, a second-round pick? Fairly early second.
Early 50s.
Early 50s, okay, yeah. So that's unfortunate because we never saw Ian Seymour's best at Virginia Tech. Or we saw it for like 2 weeks, and then COVID happened and he was gone. And now you're not starting from scratch, but it kind of feels that way because so much work got put into building that team last year, which I think was going to be a good team. I think it was an NCAA tournament team. I don't know. I don't know as much about this year's team.
Well, they've got some good pitching coming back. They've got Chris Gerard, a lefty, who I think is going to be their Friday night guy. Simonelli will be their Saturday guy. I think that the offense, they got a great transfer from Texas Tech, TJ Rumfield, who I think is going to be a big addition to the bat. So they've got Kevin Madden back. Nick Bittison's a really good second baseman.
Yeah, Bittison's been a good
Fritz
player.
Genther had a strong freshman start last year as a true freshman. Cade Hunter behind the plate is somebody whose dad, I want to say, is like the director of scouting for the Mariners. Really strong talent behind the plate. And then I think they've got a strong outfield as well. So we'll see. I mean, they were preseason to pick 6 out of 7 in the Coastal, but that is also because the ACC is, once again, ridiculous in baseball. I mean, everybody ahead of them is just really good. But I'm disappointed that last year couldn't play out because I think they would have made the ACC tournament. They would have made the. I think they had.
If you make the ACC tournament, you make the NCAA tournament. Just about,
Correct.
Basically.
So, and Kent State. So Friday night's game at 4:00 should be a good one because Luke Albright's the projected starter for Kent State. He's going to be a top 5 round draft selection, in my opinion. He was actually our ace in St. Cloud, where I was for the last 3 summers, and now he's. And I'll be calling that game, so that'll be interesting.
You've got the full scouting report.
I have the full scouting report on him, but yeah. So, anyways, that's a big one this weekend, and so that's at English Field too. You don't typically see a lot of baseball on the weekends in February.
In English
oh my
Field.
goodness! And that starts what day?
Friday.
Let's see what the high is on Friday. The high on Friday is 30 degrees. The day before Thursday is a 93% chance of precipitation, ice, and rain.
Oh, gosh.
And then the next day they play baseball.
So Kent State has to make it here, first of all.
Right. So
5.5 hour bus ride.
Again, pencil that in on your calendar. Don't ink it in because you can never be so sure about the weather.
Man,
in
just
Blacksburg
2 more weeks and we'll be in March.
So we have gone through 7 Virginia Tech teams in an hour and 20 minutes. I'm impressed. That was very efficient on everyone's part. We've gotten through all the news. And, yesterday was Valentine's Day. And, a day full of love and Reese's chocolate. And I was on Twitter and I saw SportsCenter tweeted out, what's the moment that you fell in love with sports? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to steal that. And I'm going to throw it around and turn around to those that listen and watch the Tech Sideline podcast. Ask the question Sunday morning on Valentine's Day. What Virginia Tech moment do you love the most? And I put it on the message boards, and I did not think I would have over 100 people respond, which I greatly appreciate everybody that did that. And I put it on Twitter, and everybody, it was really cool because you had different generations giving their favorite moments, right? From the 60s and 70s to Mekhi Lewis winning a national title. And there's a lot of Virginia Tech moments that were thrown out here. So I'm going to let you two think on it for a minute, but I'm going to give some of the main ones that were given on the boards. All right. So let's see. First one from Bass and Hokie, 1983, 48-0, and then 2 years later beating the Who's. That was the first one that was mentioned. Went over number 2 Memphis and Castle. Place was in Fuego. That was 2004, beating Miami in the Orange Bowl for the ACC championship. Beating Nebraska in Lincoln. Pick 6 to seal the win against Ohio State. Beating Duke in 05 on Xavier Dowdell's 3 with Ewing's shot awry. The Henson Heave, 85-foot shot to beat Florida State in the early 80s.
Probably the last time we beat Florida State in Tallahassee. Maybe not, but close.
Feels like it.
Stadium eruption after Twitty tackled Miami quarterback to cap VT win over Miami.
Tweety,
sorry.
Yeah, Alonzo Tweety.
But these are just some of the many. And then the 1973 NIT tournament, we were talking about it before we went live. There were a lot of people mentioning that. So those are some of the best. Will, favorite moment in Virginia Tech history. What do you love the most?
Well, mine is beating Texas in the Sugar Bowl in '95. And it's there's another layer to it for me. The winning the UVA game that year is also close. And there's some basketball memories that are close, but I remember being in the Superdome, and I've told this story before. I had really good seats for that game. We were upper deck. I was in the front row of the upper deck at the 10-yard line, so I could just lean on the railing and watch the game. And you can just see everything from that vantage point. And that was the culmination of a year of coming back from 0-2, but leading up to that Sugar Bowl, hearing everybody say that Virginia Tech didn't belong, they didn't deserve it, Miami should have gotten it, Texas was going to kill them, blah blah blah, and getting very little respect from anybody, and then going out there and stomping Texas. And I remember leaving the Superdome. I hung around as long as I could. They finally kicked us out, and I remember walking up the tunnel and turning around, looking and thinking, I can't see it getting any better than this. And then the next morning, we watched ESPN, and I watched Lee Corso apologize to Virginia Tech for underestimating them and bad-mouthing them. And I remember we were sitting in our hotel room, and he said that, and I got up and I said, all right, let's go. Done. Trip's over. Just that's all I need to see. Time to go home. But for me, that was also the very last Tech football game I watched just as a fan, and didn't have to, because I started the website in March of '96. So from that point on, every game I have had to write about it afterwards. And that game I did not. I could just enjoy it as a fan. So I have that extra layer.
Chris Coleman, what Virginia Tech moment do you love the most?
I have a three-way tie, and I don't favor one over the other. But it's interesting. Your last point is interesting. The last game that you watched as a fan, and my senior year, Tech won the ACC first year in the conference. So
2004.
Right. So beating Miami that year to win the ACC is up there. And now that I think about it, I guess that's the last, besides the Sugar Bowl that year against Auburn, I guess. But that's really basically the last time I ever watched a Virginia Tech game as just a fan, because I started working for TSL the next summer.
Well, you were working that year as an intern, and
I was working that year as an intern.
You were alternating doing game recaps with Adam Abramson
for football games.
Mm-hmm. Adam would do one, you'd do one.
No kidding.
Chris wrote under the pseudonym Chris James.
Yeah, yeah. Because
that's his middle name.
Because I had a press pass back then through VTTV.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't want them to find out that I was. They wouldn't have let me into practice if they knew I was writing for TSL. So I used a fake name to write for TSL.
So you wrote under a pseudonym.
Yeah, exactly. So that was my senior year, and my last 2 years of high school were the Michael Vick years, and Tech wins 11 games both of those years. And then I'm excited to come to Virginia Tech, and all of a sudden, my freshman year, we only won 8 games. And then the next year, we win 10, but we also lose 4 because we play 14 games.
Most of them at the end.
Exactly. So 10-4. And then my junior year, we go 8-5 and just tank it, a team that everybody thought was going to be in the top 10. So I'm like, man, so my last year, two years of high school, we were a top 5 program, played for a national championship. And then I finally get to Virginia Tech, where I've always wanted to be. And now we're not nowhere near as good as we used to be. Yeah. So I felt like my first 3 years of college from a football standpoint were extremely disappointing. So my senior year winning the ACC, my senior year, Tech's first year in the league, was big. Clinching undefeated season against Boston College in '99. I came up that year with my dad to the UAB game, and I told him, and that was back when there was a big stretch where Tech would sell out season tickets every year, and there were never any individual game tickets, but that hadn't quite happened yet. So after the UAB game, I told my dad, order tickets to the Boston College game because we're going to clinch an undefeated season that night. And he did, and we did.
Yeah.
So being there to see Tech clinch that undefeated season, you kind of have a pretty good idea that you're going to play for the national championship, but you don't really know it for sure. And remember, the scoreboard accidentally reported that Colorado had beaten Nebraska, and that turned out to be a false report. Wow. But there was a stretch during that celebration where we thought it was over. We thought Nebraska had just lost, and we thought we're definitely going to the national championship game. As it turned out, it was a false report, and Nebraska ended up winning that game. Tech still went. But we were celebrating like Nebraska had lost, and we knew. Yeah. So that's up there. And then my third is Sweet 16 in men's basketball. I almost did a 4-way tie with the Sugar Bowl, but I was only 12 years old at the time. I grasped the significance of it, but from an emotional standpoint, I really wasn't old enough to take it all in. And plus, I didn't go to New Orleans like most people did. I was only 12 years old. So, but yeah, those are my top 3 in no particular order.
No, I totally get the 1973 NIT thing. If you ask my dad's passed away, but if you asked him what was your favorite memory as a Hokie fan, he would pick that. One thing I left out was Chris Kinzer's game-winning field goal my senior year.
Peach Bowl, right?
For Tech's first ever win.
First ever bowl win.
First ever bowl win, yeah.
First ever win.
Sorry.
It took them 100 years to win a game, but they finally got one.
I got distracted, and I was thinking about I've lived and died a million times that game. Yeah. And that was just so awesome. But I get the NIT thing because you only went to the NCAA tournament back then as a team if you won your conference tournament. So a lot of really good teams wound up in the NIT. And
yeah, there's a reason that the ACC tournament has so much lore. And it's because originally you had to win it to make the NCAA tournament.
And there were some of the best basketball teams in the country.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, like, if only one of Duke, UNC, Virginia, Florida State, or even this year Virginia Tech, Syracuse. Can you imagine if only one of those teams could make the NCAA tournament? And so I know a lot of people don't take the ACC tournament as seriously these days, especially those who don't go back very far.
Yeah.
But if you had to win the ACC tournament to go to the NCAA tournament, man, everybody would be watching the ACC tournament.
I mean, it was 8 teams, 3 days.
Yeah.
It'd start on Friday and finish on Sunday, and it was just incredible.
That's awesome. There's a couple of other great ones that are being thrown in here right now. Michael Watson, 95 Castle win to go to New York. Eric Fisher, the obvious, end of the fourth quarter of the 99 West Virginia game. I've heard my dad talk about that way too many times and wish I was alive for it. Let's see here. Yes.
Wish I was alive for it.
Where I was. I'm sorry. I was like 4 months old. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Let's see here. Eric Fisher, I don't think that anything can ever top the 99 Boston College game for me as his favorite moment that he loves the most. Hokie, 94 CPA. For me, it's either 1990 UVA, 38-13, or Syracuse, 99, 62-0. Both of those games were absolutely amazing.
38-13 was rocking. That was fun.
And so, yeah, and then Hokie Chip chimes in. 1986 Peach Bowl. And so, yeah, those are a lot of great moments. I'll go for the people that are in college right now. How about that? I'll go ahead and say it. I think we, like Malcolm and I, we will talk about the North Carolina 6 overtime game for decades. Like when we are, talking to our kids about it. Like that, for me, I try not to put my fandom hat on, but my parents were actually up for that week, and I got to watch that game with the 3 of them and just to experience that with them and just – I'll never.
By the way, 3 of them, you mean your 2 parents and your sister, right?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I don't think my sister was there. It was just the 2 of us, or 3 of us. And but anyway, it was, the referee. Everyone's all quiet, going crazy. The missed field goal. Like, what's going to happen next with the overtime rule? I'll just never forget that.
I'll never forget when the referee started reading the rules.
And stop!
And it was so quiet. You could hear a pin drop in there.
I'm serious.
Because I had no idea there were new overtime rules once you get to a certain
point. It's like you see that rule come across in February. What? It's like, yeah, it's never going to happen to us. And it's like, wait a minute. There was a change in the overtime.
Yes, I spent that day in Columbia, South Carolina at my niece's wedding, and she's a gamecock. She ought to know better.
Well, let's real quick. I don't know how many questions we do have, but I did get a tweet from RG on Twitter, and you are 100% right. I should have mentioned this earlier, and I'm glad you reminded me. We'll throw an 8th team into mention, and I do want to shout out Virginia Tech track and field, because did you guys see what Jacory Patterson did? I mean, just ridiculous. And I apologize. This is something that should have been brought up way earlier on the podcast, but he broke the 400-meter all-time ACC indoor record.
He's broken a lot of records the last
It's hard to
years.
keep track of him.
It's hard to keep track of Jacory's records.
That is just ridiculous. He set a new school record in the 4x400 meter relay too. That's unbelievable. I mean, he might go down as one. We think about best athletes in Virginia
he's
Tech
definitely
history.
one of the best athletes in Tech
It's
history,
incredible.
no question.
Is he a sophomore?
I think he's a junior.
Let me see, Jacory Patterson. Let me click on his profile.
I think you're right. I think he's a junior by now.
He is a junior. He is from Columbia, South Carolina.
From Columbia.
So this record that he set, was it in Blacksburg?
It was at the Tiger Paw Invite. I believe that is Clemson.
Probably Clemson. It's interesting because Tech has a really nice indoor track now.
Mm-hmm.
So that was impressive. So, yeah, 8 sports, and congratulations to Patterson. I mean, I feel like it's just every time you hear news, it's him breaking some new record.
Right.
So I'm sure he'll probably be a first ballot Virginia Tech Hall of Famer when his
he should be
when his time comes, right?
No
I
doubt.
mean, yeah, you think about that right now, like the athletes that are currently here at Virginia Tech, who would be like a first ballot Hall of Famer to Virginia Tech?
Well, there are 3 actually off the top of my head.
Like right now, Mekhi
Patterson,
Lewis.
Richard, Mekhi Lewis. Those are 3
Yes.
that would be first ballot.
Yeah, the current track that Keely Richard's on, she'd be first ballot. That's interesting. That would make for a good article.
I think that would be a fun podcast. If we talk about in the offseason way more time, we could talk about the those who should be next in the Hall of Fame. So.
And
I can talk about Jim Kavanaugh some more.
Yeah, there you go.
There is a depending upon what Hunter Boland does in the NCAA's, if he winds up being a national champion, he could wind up.
If you win an individual national championship, yes, you should be in the Hall of Fame. Absolutely. Yeah. I'd like to get to the point where we win so many national championships that it's no longer.
You have to actually argue about
it.
All right. Well, hey, we do have 2 questions, and that segment I knew was going to take up a lot of our question segment, but 2 questions I want to get to. The first one, great name, Shea Francisco. Does Burmeister's lack of arm strength concern anyone else? The kid looked good running the offense last year, but he doesn't look like he has any zip on deep passes. What do you say?
I would say that's accurate. Yeah. I mean, he's never going to throw like a great deep ball or anything like that. Fact of the matter is, we had 3 quarterbacks this past year that had won Power 5 games, and none of them were perfect. Like Hooker was never big enough to take the beating required, and he just wasn't an advanced passer. He had a good enough arm, but he wasn't a good passer. And then Quincy just came from a background where there were absolutely no advanced passing concepts taught at all. So all those guys had weaknesses last year, and I guess that's probably Burmeister's, just he doesn't have a dynamic arm. But there's nobody else on the team that doesn't have at least one major weakness either.
Well, and Tech doesn't have a guy who can stretch the defense anyway, unless Jaden Pate comes back and
right.
And that turned out to be true, that he can beat press coverage and get down the field.
Right. Which I think it probably is. If you want Jaden Pate to make a big play, it's going to be more likely to come from a, if they put him in the slot, maybe a wheel route, or he slips a tackle on a post or something like that. Because right now, even if he was our Andre Davis of this year, we don't have the Michael Vick to throw him the ball.
Yeah, because you got to wait for the guy to clear coverage. And by that time, he's 20, 25, 30 yards downfield. And the ball's going to be in the air a while.
Right.
So you got to be able to throw it 50 or 60 yards.
Final question from Billy Parvadum. Excuse me. Do you guys think that men's college basketball should adopt the quarter system like the women? Is there anything the men can do to maintain a nice pace to the game, or are you satisfied with how the game currently is?
It doesn't matter to me either way. How do commercial breaks work in women's?
5 minutes and quarter breaks.
Yep, that's it. There's just one media timeout, and that's under 5 every quarter.
So you actually in women's basketball have a break at If you take the half as an entirety, you have a break at 15 minutes, 10 minutes, and 5 minutes, whereas in men's basketball, that's 16, 12.
So it's still the same amount of.
No, it's actually one less.
It's one fewer.
Yeah.
It's one fewer.
So that's an argument for having quarters.
Yeah, and that's why it'll never happen. There's one fewer commercial break for ACC.
Well, they just make them longer.
Yeah, I'd actually rather have more short ones. Maybe, I don't know, but.
Well, they need to do like NASCAR does and soccer does and run ads next to the action.
It never ceases to amaze me that, like, soccer is the biggest sport in the world, and the Premier League TV contract is worth billions, and they don't even have commercials.
Yeah,
except for during halftime and stuff, right? So yes, it can be done. It certainly can be done.
It's just bullheadedness, legacy.
It is. It absolutely is.
Obstinate.
Yeah.
Real quick, TK Cali just writes in, so will there be an ACC tournament, or will they just play a couple postponed games instead? No, there will be an ACC tournament. That will happen.
Seems like it. They have.
It's on the books. I don't believe at this point those postponed games will be made up.
No,
is that fair to say?
I whatever ones are going to be made up are probably already been announced.
Probably already.
I just don't see. Unless you start playing 4 games in a week, I don't see how it's possible.
They're not going to make them. It doesn't appear they're going to make teams play. Well, in Virginia Tech's case, they're playing 2 games a week. I know some schools are playing 3 games a week.
Georgia Tech, I think, has had a stretch recently where
3 in like 5 or 6 days.
They're in the middle of a big stretch where they're playing a lot. But yeah, I would think if there wasn't going to be an ACC tournament, you would have heard about it by now.
Yep.
So everything's on. So what a great show. What a great show. You know, there's a lot going on in Virginia Tech athletics, and that's what we do is break it all down. We have 20 likes on our video right now. If you're watching live on YouTube,
that's not enough.
Please give us a thumbs up and like and subscribe and hit the notification button as well.
Hit the bell.
Hit the bell. So, all right, well, that'll wrap it up here on this gloomy day in Blacksburg, but a great show nonetheless. Chris Coleman, what's coming up on TechSideline.com this week?
Yeah, I've got to check my calendar because I'm pretty sure basketball getting stopped again is threw a wrench into things. But I know I have a Brandon Patterson article today. I've talked to Corey Van Dyke about doing a baseball preview.
Right.
Yeah. So
And we've got, of course, softball recap and preview.
We'll come up with plenty of stuff.
And we'll do
Don't
some
worry.
other stuff.
Yeah.
So, all right. Yeah, kind of so no wrestling this week. Maybe no men's basketball this week. No women's basketball till Sunday. So you've got softball with the big weekend coming up. You've got lacrosse and the big one at JMU on Wednesday, and then and baseball this weekend. So it's
that's wild. So lacrosse is not only going to be on the ACC network against JMU, but they're going to be on again Sunday afternoon against Duke.
Yep. So this is a big week for lacrosse. And I tell you what, if they knock off JMU, that would be a big deal for the program.
Okay.
So
Former national championship winner, JMU.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, be sure to follow Tech Sideline on Twitter at Tech Sidelines are home. Will's on Twitter at Will Stewart TSL. Chris is on Twitter at Chris Coleman TSL. And be sure to check out all of our great work at TechSideline.com. All right, gentlemen, any closing thoughts?
None whatsoever.
I don't think so, no.
Everybody enjoy your weeks. Thanks so much for watching. That'll do it. Episode 167 of the Tech Sideline podcast for our managing editor, Chris Coleman, our founder and general manager, Will Stewart, the best podcast producer in the land, Malcolm Stewart. I'm your podcast host, Evan Hughes, saying so long. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Episode 167 of the Tech Sideline podcast brought to you by the Southeast Regional Training Center, Anytime Fitness, and Campus Emporium. Have a great week, Hokies.